All right, everybody, and welcome. Yes, welcome again. The second day in a row, you get to listen to Shootin the Breeze with me and Josh. Josh, what do you think? 2 days in a row. We got one late one last night and another interview today.
I am a little tired from our late night last night. We had a great night up there. Just life happens, and we had to come back today. We are going to do this interview from the camper again, but freaking hot water heater went, so I had to come home.
I know. I hear you. That sucks. Anything come of that or no?
Now I tried to do it when I got home, but the pilot light won't stay lit, so we got to change the thermocouple.
That sucks, dude. All right. Well, we today we have an interview today with a gentleman named Jim Harshaw. Now, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about Jim?
He was recommended to us from our first conversation, well, second one, with Teague.
Right. Okay.
Moore. He said he's a great guy to have on. He was a fellow wrestler from Pennsylvania, became an All-American at the University of Virginia, and now he is, I want to say he's a motivational speaker. He's a speaker. He helps people try to reach success.
Okay. Yeah.
It's his business.
Okay.
So he does one-on-one. He goes out. He talks to people, and just from the TED Talk, he's just a down-to-earth guy, and I can't wait to.
Yeah. No, honestly, I didn't I kind of heard what the TED Talks were, but I really didn't, I really didn't delve into it too much because I've always heard about it, but I didn't know what it was. But obviously, these TED Talks are pretty popular. It's a series of talks. And I think when I wrote it down earlier, TED stands for technology,
Entertainment and design.
And design, right? So I guess back all the way back in like 1984, I guess I forgot the guy's name at the moment, decided that those are the three things that's going to take people in life to succeed. And I guess a whole bunch of guys are motivational speakers, men and women, came out there, and that's their format that they go by, and it seems to be working for a lot of people.
Yeah, and when you said it was 1984 that TED Talks came out, I was shocked because I just started to hear about them a couple years ago, watching them on the internet.
Right.
But I guess in 1984 there was no internet, so it was just people going to conferences and people talking.
No, and when you think about it too, I was hit with realization the other day too. Is like, when you think about, we have cell phones now and we talk. That's part. And now we talk on the phone. Then we started texting. That's part of the technology aspect of it. Me and Shannon were watching a show the other night that was supposed to take place back in 1998. There's a time frame, and the answer to one of the guy's questions was, "I'm going to text my dad right now." And my wife was like, "That's a mishap. That doesn't, that. She's like, you know what? But then we looked it up. And I remember texting around 99, 98, but she said the first text actually went out, the first SMX text went out in 1992. Obviously, a lot of people didn't have it. The Sidekick came out in 98.
Okay, well, Jim is on right now. So, Jim, I'm not sure what you're looking at, but there should be a call-in button somewhere on your screen. We're going to try to click on you. We're inviting you as a speaker right now.
All right.
So let me know if you're able to click, because the last person I had on had a hard time getting on. It took a little bit, because this is a site that not a lot of people use. I know he's also a podcaster with over 400 podcasts under his belt. So,
wow. And I think, just reading up on him, his premise is great, especially this day and age. People they get to a certain point, and they're already, I guess, pretty successful, or they need some, direction, and seems to point them in the right direction. And he's been responsible for a lot of success stories.
Yeah, he's saying he can't see the call-in button. That's the same thing Sean had a problem with. When you clicked on the link from your email, it sent you right into the podbean.com, and I'm not sure what your screen looks like, because the same thing happened to the last conversation I had with Sean. Do me a favor, just exit out, and I believe he just sent you another one. Try that one, because now we're right in here. Because you're in the listener, but you're just not able to call in. I'm going to send you a picture of what our screen looks like.
All right, this is the some of the drawbacks of having a primitive setup like we do, sitting in the comfort of my family room right now. It is comfortable, but one day we'll have that big studio, Josh.
Yeah, see, that's the same thing Sean had. This is the screen that you need to get into right here, podbean.com. And it'll, if you click, hold on one second, I'm trying to enlarge it. I don't even know what did you name this one? Just Shootin the Breeze. It should be today's date, the 20. Yeah. What is it? Today's the 22nd.
Yep.
So the 22nd, whatever's going live. If you go into the Podbean under Keep Talking 365, and then click on that, it should pop up with a live Shootin the Breeze. Because the screen that you want is the one I just sent you. You're kind of in like the generic screen right now. But hopefully he can get in and he can start telling us his story. Because, again, we had a great conversation with Teague growing up out in that area, and it's big-time wrestling.
Yeah.
And he went from high school to college, All-American, and then started coaching. And I didn't realize he was the youngest coach in the country at that time.
Wow. Yeah, that was a good. That interview got a lot of plays. It just seems like, me not being from that wrestling community that you're from. When we first started talking about this, I myself had a lot of questions because I didn't have that background. I don't have a wrestling background, and I don't even have that big high school field background that I grew up with.
That's
so.
Right now. Hello.
All right, we're getting a phone call from our guy right now. All right, I see somebody has just joined us for the live feed. We're just having some technical difficulties hooking up with Jim right now, but we should be right with you in about. Just give us a minute. We're just checking on the feed. We're doing the call-in type of interview here, so. This would definitely, we'll go back in editing, but actually not. Maybe let me talk a little bit. Like last night, we did our Shootin the Breeze podcast. We did up at Josh's camper. Well, here we go. All right, one of the downfalls of live radio. It's kind of a good thing we're don't have a million people listening. Well, if we had a million people listening, I would definitely have a lot more prepared. But we were up pretty late last night, tired. Got some cleaning up to do. My wife's best friend from Australia is coming in. She'll be coming in tomorrow morning. And obviously, being that she lives on the other side of the world, very rarely gets a chance to.
He's trying it another way.
All right. Well, we got somebody here live with us now. If anybody's here for the, like I said, if you're here for the Jim Harshaw interview, we're just having a couple of technical difficulties trying to hook up with him. He's trying to call in right now.
He said he was going to try it in Safari. And it's weird because Sean had the same problem when they went in. This is the screen they had.
Okay.
And they can hear us, and it says live, but you just can't call in. Like, it doesn't show this screen.
Right.
So I just tried to call Sean to see what he did to do it.
Like I said, we'll see. Hopefully, we could go. We could actually go back in and edit. So
yeah, I'm hoping it comes on. Mr. NK, not sure who that is.
I don't know.
But so back to last night. I don't know what you're talking about when I was out there on the phone with Jim, but that was a great conversation we had last night.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was starting to get into. Yeah, we did have a good conversation last night, and I think just literally like it was just me and you for like 24 hours straight, and we did a bunch of talking, and yeah, it was great. It was really good, man. I really, we laughed. I don't think I laughed so hard last night. I don't even, it's I haven't laughed that hard in a long time. Like I thank you for that, because I definitely needed that belly laugh that we had last night when I was trying to explain James Cameron and
dude, you had me so flabbergasted.
Man, hold on a second. You're gonna have to hold this for a second. I have to go deal with something.
Yeah, no worries. But we were talking about the lost submarine. It's going down to the Titanic, and he was trying to explain to me something about James Cameron, and he goes, the director of Avatar, and I'm like, I looked at him like, is he joking right now? We're talking about the Titanic, and he's explaining James Cameron to me as the director of Avatar, and I'm like, why didn't you just say the director of the Titanic?
Right, exactly. You know what it is? Because we started off talking about those two missing guys that went down to check out the Titanic, and they're obviously missing, and I'd have to assume that they're not with us anymore. But that's how it started. The conversation started, and all of a sudden it took a turn, and all of a sudden I was talking about Avatar because I was trying to convey the message that James Cameron directed Titanic, and before he directed Titanic, he got into one of those little capsules, and he sunk all the way down to the bottom to go see if he could get there. So see my message right now is being conveyed a lot easier than it was last night.
But still, to me, I was like,
Yeah. But would you ever do that?
you know,
If the government said to you, Josh Shoemaker, I'm going to do it for free. It's not like one of those, $300,000 you go to Mars. You say, listen, we need a test person to go down to check out the Titanic. You're going to go down 5.5 miles in this new thing that we just developed. It's like, would you be willing to be the, I guess, test dummy? I guess
no,
you wouldn't do that.
no.
I wouldn't do it either. I wouldn't do the water, and I wouldn't do anything like if they want to shoot you up into space. Listen, I'm a guy. I like to do things. I like to jump. I'll jump. I'll do cliff diving.
Yes.
I'll do all that crazy shit. But once you get past the atmosphere or below sea level, I don't know.
We were
man.
talking about it last night. The whole ocean thing.
Yeah.
Like down in the Keys, there's the beach we went to. You could swim out, and there was a rock ledge. You walked across the rocks, but then about 150 yards out was like a sandbar where boats actually pulled up to, and there were 30 boats sitting there.
Yeah.
And we started to swim out there, and when I couldn't see the bottom anymore, I was like, nope.
Exactly. And I don't think we talked about it on the podcast last night, but I think we talked about it around the fire. We started to talk about this movie, Open Water. Now, listen, The Exorcist was a scary movie. You get your Halloween, you get your Friday the 13th, but that was kind of like an anxiety type scare movie because it puts you in the two of those scuba divers' position. Like they 30 miles off course, they can't find them, and they're stuck in the middle of the ocean. Sharks are bumping into them. They're losing their oxygen. I mean, they can't stay up. Like it's like, they got sunburn, their lips are all burnt. And I don't really understand, that would be so scary to me, just being stuck in the middle of the ocean like that. Just like if you just be launched out in the middle of space, that would be pretty scary too.
Yeah. No, I'm just sorry.
No.
Jim's trying to
trying to fill time.
He's still in. It's showing this thing right here. Yeah.
Is he on his phone?
No, he's on the computer.
He could be on his phone.
Yeah, Jim, if you can hear me, maybe try doing it from your phone and just there's an app.
Hey, I think I got you.
There you go.
All right, we did it.
All right. Hey, Jim, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I mean, this was a little bit of hard getting you on, but I appreciate it.
Can you
I just switched over to my phone. It wasn't. I couldn't figure out how to do it on the computer, so it just clicked through on my app here.
All right, well, you sound great.
Good. I just switched over to my earbuds, so we should be good now.
All right.
So
sorry about that, guys. Let's do this.
Yeah, man.
100%.
I love your energy already, Jim. I love it. Let's go, baby.
Let's do it.
Well, I got to thank you for taking time out and coming on here with us. Like I said, I don't know if you're listening. You're a fellow podcaster. We're also with 400 under your belts.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, I was listening the whole time. Yeah, I could hear you the whole time.
Right.
So, yeah, I got 400 of these things under my belt. So, technical difficulties happen. So, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you being in the field that you're in, obviously, you're motivational speaker, coaching, and stuff like that. I mean, from what I see is I've been following types of podcasts, for a long time. And listen, I'm just Murph I live in Fishkill. I don't got really many people, but the fact of the matter is I like to talk to people. So, but the point I'm trying to make is podcasting is definitely the wave of the future. I mean, because you could literally, me and you were just talking right now on a type of a podcast, and we're going to have a conversation. You're going to tell us some great stuff. And it's I think that's the future because anybody could talk to anybody when it comes to this type of platform.
Yeah. And, we can connect people around the world and, we're getting to talk right now and broadcast it to the world, and anybody can step up and have their own platform now. And it's awesome that it's a huge spike. There was a huge spike in number of podcasts, especially in 2020. But I saw an interesting statistic graph yesterday from this podcasting kind of coach who I use that shared, and I actually posted it on my Twitter, where the number of new podcasts is actually decreasing now. So it doesn't mean the number of total podcasts is decreasing, but the number of new ones launched every year and every day and every month is now less than it was the year before. So I think it's starting to level out, and you get some of the big media conglomerates who are sucking up a lot of the downloads, but yeah, we're on our way back down in terms of new ones launched, but there's hundreds of thousands of great podcasts out there. So glad to be on with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I mean, even with me, like, being listening to different interviews and stuff, and you getting into podcasting, like, I'm a big free speech guy, and like you just said, all these big conglomerate companies, like Sirius coming in, and you name your
Yeah.
Spotify, whoever it is, coming in and like scooping up all these podcasts. I mean, I listened to Mark Maron say a bunch of years ago about podcasting, that podcasting is the last bastion of free speech, that you literally could come in here and pretty much talk about whatever you want
Yeah.
without really any regulations. But I feel with all these big, huge companies going to come in, and they're really going to do to the podcasting industry exactly what they did to the radio industry with all these warnings and these rules.
Yeah. Yeah. You wonder where that's going to go. You hope not, but I think with social media, of course, you see some regulation and stuff like that, but like podcasting, hopefully you don't. And uh, the internet, I mean, people can find anybody. I mean,
Right.
you can be like, one of five people who are interested in like underwater basket weaving, for octogenarians, and like you'll find each other
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, last night while we were doing it, we were also going on TikTok Live. And the great thing about that is all of a sudden someone just popped on and we just started to talk to him. He was from
now.
Chicago, we're from,
Yeah.
and he was just bored. He's like, yeah, I just got off with two curly haired brunettes. Now I'm talking to you two. And we're like, you lucked out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I'd like to, if I may, I'd like to, if you don't mind, I want to read kind of like a quote that you said, the kind of, that not the, I like the quote. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people maybe don't really understand what this actually means, but I really like it. I read a quote that you says, we all need an unreasonable person in our lives who hold us to a different standard. And I think that's a very important quote, because I think everybody needs a little bit of uncomfortability in their lives in order to succeed. I guess hence your failure slash succeeding, mantra that you do. And I think that by reading that quote, I think that's a very smart and very a smart quote, because when you feel uncomfortable, either you're going to sink or swim. And it's like, and the people that want to succeed, if they're uncomfortable, they're going to make themselves comfortable and succeed. I think that's a great quote.
Yeah, and the end of that quote is really key, and it is we all need a person, and we all need an unreasonable person in our lives who holds us to a higher standard than we believe that we can attain.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go back to my wrestling career, I remember a moment in college when we had a brand new assistant wrestling coach come in. It was the beginning of the season. It was an early, preseason lift. It was like August or maybe early September. College, just got back in, and we're in the weight room with the team, and I was doing low rows. And you sit on the seat, you grab the handle, and you pull it, right. And I was, my sheet that I held in front of me, the strength coach said 10 reps of X number of pounds, and I set the pounds, did my 10 reps, and I dropped the weight, and I got up, and this new coach, his name's John McGovern. John looked at me and he goes, sit back down. So I sat down, and he pulled the pin and he dropped it down about 3 blocks, and he said, now do it. And I did it. And the last 3 reps or so were pretty ugly, but I did them. I got them done. And John became, in that moment, this unreasonable person in my life who held me to a higher standard that I believed that I could attain. But he believed it, and we all need that person, right? We all need that John McGovern. We all need the person in our life who's gonna tell us to sit back down and drop that pin and put it in, three weights higher, and now give it a try. And maybe I succeed, maybe I fail, but a new level is attained when you have that person. And we understand this in the sports. Everybody can kind of go, oh, okay, that makes sense. You're an athlete, you're in the weight room, and your coach pushes you. I get it. Well, guess what? The what's at stake now in my life and in your lives, guys, and for you, the listeners, what's at stake in your life is far more important than winning a wrestling match. It's like your life and your livelihood and your family and your hopes and dreams and your wishes. Like, you need that person in your life now more than ever. And that's what a coach does, right? That's what a personal performance coach or a life coach or an executive coach, that's the role of that person. And a lot of people think, yeah, but I'm already successful, or I don't need that. I'm motivated. I listen to podcasts and I read books, but guess what? Who cares? All that information's out there. It's on YouTube. It's in books. It's on podcasts. But you still need the person, right? If I was a college wrestler again, and and I thought to myself, I know how to run a wrestling practice. Like, I know a bunch of wrestling moves. I know how to lift weights. I don't need a coach. Could I have succeeded? Yeah, maybe at some level, but certainly not anywhere close to getting on the podium at the national championships. Like, we need that person. We need that unreasonable person in our lives who holds us to a higher standard than we believe that we can attain. We need that now in the real world more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes you get complacent. Like then we're going to ask you the question about your definition of success and failure, but you can be a successful person, but continue to skate by, but you could become even more successful with someone pushing you. And I hate to say it, but I think your significant other has a tendency to do that also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I would say my wife is don't want to say it to her face, but unreasonable person in my life.
That's right. Yeah, they make you a better person. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it hurts. I know. I mean, shoot, my wife she has changed me in profound ways, and it's not always easy, and it's not always like some rosy marriage with rainbows and butterflies every day. It's hard. Relationships are hard, but man, she holds me to that standard. Not sort of explicitly like, hey, Jim, you're gonna bust. You're gonna go for your 6 mile run this morning. She's not doing that to me. But like,
Right.
How I talk to the kids, or how the attention that I put upon my business versus her, or like all that stuff. Like there's a standard there that if you're willing to put your ego aside, you can see like, okay, this is actually good for me.
That was one thing. Rich and I, like I said, we were 2.5 hours away last night up in my camper, and we were 10 miles from my camper. My wife called in the hot water. We had no hot water, so I had to talk her through. Went down, look at it. It's not working. So we were going to do the podcast up there, but we had to turn around and leave today to come down so I could try to get to hot water. It's still not working. But on the way back, we were talking about the one thing, like with what you do. Sometimes the successful people are hard to talk to because they have an ego and won't allow someone to tell them that you could do it differently or better. Yeah. Do you see that? Do you get that with what you do, or do people come to you and they're the ones that want your help, or do you do outreach also?
Well, most of my clients come to me. They're not looking for a coach. They're not. Most of them aren't thinking, I want to get myself an executive performance coach. They find me, they find my podcast, or they come across my social media, or we're connected in some other way, and they hear what I do and how I help people, and they go, like the message I just shared with you about having that unreasonable person in your life, and they go, that makes sense. Sign me up. But most people look at having a coach as almost like a weakness, which is odd because probably my most successful client, he's extremely wealthy. He's got he's a neurosurgeon. He's a published author. He's a philanthropist. I mean, he's good at everything that he does. He talks openly about me. He's like, I got a life coach. I got this guy, Jim. He's my life coach. And everybody looks at him and goes, wait, you have a coach? Like,
Yeah.
That's what successful people do. And, people look at, people standing on stages and on podiums and on platforms and on TV and having their big media platforms, and they think that they're self-made. And it's like, when you really talk to these people, they have an environment. I call it the environment of excellence. They have an environment around them, just like we know a Tom Brady has an environment around him, which has coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, nutrition coaches, quarterback coaches. Pretty sure Tom Brady knows how to throw a football, but he still had quarterback coach. He was around other elite athletes. He wasn't practicing with like the local high school team. He was practicing with elite athletes. Like, who are you, the listener? Who are you surrounding yourself by? Like, you want to be a better father? You want to be a better business person? You want to, be more fit? Go be around those people. Go find ways to be in the same room as those people. And guess what? You will automatically, your standard will change. You will be around these other people. And so, get back to your question, do people, seek me out? they do once they hear the idea of what a coach actually truly is and who has them, the elite performers of the world, whether it's in sport or business or otherwise, and they go, yeah, let me kick the tires on this. Let me check this out.
Right. You know what? I have a question kind of like, because what you were saying, like, you coach, people that are successful. Now, I have kind of like, a kind of a gray area question when it comes to that, because, people that are successful, they come to you and, you get their life coach going and stuff like that. So my question to you is, do you think that some of these people who are already successful need somebody just to reassure them that they're good and they're doing the right thing and they're performing at a high level, or because
Oh, I
maybe
love
they're
that
just used to
question.
being around people that are just telling them they're great their whole lives? And
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, now it's like I need a real person to tell me if I'm really doing the right thing or if I'm really doing good. Because I've had these 30 or 40 people around me my whole life that just told me how great I was. But I think they were just saying that because they were my mother or they were my friend. But now
Yeah.
you're this guy that's going to look at his life in a perspective that you don't really know him. And you're going to tell him like what he's doing and what he's not doing to make himself successful.
Here's an interesting thing that was revealed to me initially, or confirmed to me by a mentor of mine who's somewhat of a coach for me. He's now a business partner. He's a mindset coach, performance coach. He's worked with the elite of the elite athletes. I mean, he's coached. He's been the coach for college coaches and professional coaches in the NHL and the NBA, MLS, five-time national champion soccer coach Bruce Arena, women's U.S. national team. He coached them when they won the World Cup. He
Wow.
was their mindset coach. I said to him one day, I said, "Do you find that high achievers can sometimes have the most self-doubt?" He said, "Yes, absolutely."
Yeah.
And these are people, listen, me included. I'm putting myself in this category. People who have the most self doubt, they are out there grinding, working hard, trying to prove themselves to themselves, trying to prove themselves to the world. So having a coach is reassuring. Now, listen, everybody's wired differently. Everybody needs a coach for different reasons, and there are different styles of coaching. You have to figure out what works for you. But uh, yeah, you have to have that person who is either reassuring you that you're doing things right or calling you out, and saying, "Hey, this is one of those things. You have doubt around this, or you hired me to help you see your blind spot. Well, guess what? You're doing that thing again, right? You're
Right.
you're you're letting yourself off the hook, or you're making an excuse, or you're being busy, you're hustling, you're grinding, you're hustling every day, being busy every day, but you're not working on the strategic stuff that we talked about. You got to get up to strategy as opposed to working on tactics if you really want to grow. So yeah, you have to have that person who can call you out. And the people who you see out in the world who are extremely who appear and are to some extent extremely confident. And I think in a lot of ways I appear to be that person to a lot of people. I was an all-American wrestler and Olympic hopeful, and I've got this great business and platform. And I mean, there's doubt, there's fear, there's struggle every day, and I've got multiple coaches in my life who help me through this stuff and continue to build myself and to build the impact that I make in the world.
Right. I mean, and it's funny because, because you look at these different types of, the way, the people, the life coaches and the way they go about their business. Like I watch David Goggins a lot. And I'm sure you know who David
Yeah,
Goggins is. And
sure.
David Goggins said something the other day that you have to learn how to grind through your day and be the best you can without motivation. And that hit me so hard because basically what he was saying is there's going to be days when you don't want to get out of bed. There's going to be days when you don't want to do your job. But those are the days where you got to get up and grind because the motivation's not there. So you kind of got to create your own motivation. So I think like that he comes from a place where he gets up in the morning, looks himself in the mirror and says, I'm a piece of garbage. So this is my day. I'm just going to work to be better. So I think there's like kind of two schools of that. There's like the positivity thing. And then there's the angle of somebody looking at themselves like, listen, I'm just going to be better than I was yesterday because I was a piece of garbage yesterday, but I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday. So do you think that those are like two types of mindsets for people going in to be successful?
Yes. So uh, so go. I wrote one thought down because I have two thoughts. And what was the start of that question again?
Well, I
Regarding
like I said, I listened to David Goggins, and David Goggins basically like he said something the other day, pretty much where you literally have to learn how to grind and
Oh
be
yeah,
your
without
best
motivation.
self
Right.
without
Yeah. Okay.
motivation.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. So okay. So two thoughts here. Number one, do it anyway. Absolutely, do it anyway. You can, if you're waiting for motivation every day, it's not going to be there every day. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the framework that was in place, the infrastructure that was in place in my life when I was a college athlete, and it was in place in Tom Brady's life. It was in place in David Goggins' life when he was a Navy SEAL, and that is, you have someone else building the schedule for you. If you're not motivated that day, guess what? So what? You have to be there. You just have to, right? I had to be at practice. I hated going to practice. Like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's my down. That's where my energy is on the downhill. I'm like, but I had to be there, right? Tom Brady had to be there. David Goggins, you got to be there. You have somebody else outside of you pushing you and holding you accountable, whether or not the motivation is there. The motivation is irrelevant. Now, here's the thing. Most of you listeners are not in that situation. You're not a college athlete or a professional athlete, or maybe not in the military where there is this infrastructure. We are out walking through the real world. And guess what? If I want to eat that donut, I can eat that donut. If I want to sleep in, I can hit the snooze button. If I want to show up to work a little bit late, I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, if I want to show up to work half an hour late, guess what? I can do that. We have to find the motivation ourselves, which is just having the discipline and just doing the thing anyway, which you can call it motivation, or you can call it just doing it without motivation. You still have to do it, or you build the infrastructure, right? And that infrastructure might be some kind of accountability partner. It can be another coach, a coach who's holding you accountable to getting the thing done. And so there's that, right? Yes, of course, David got what he said is like, we can't just wait for the motivation. And one last point on that before I make the second point is, when you find that you're not motivated to pick up the phone to make that first sales call, or you're wanting to reach over and hit that snooze button, if you don't have the motivation, you have to mechanically do the thing. Just mechanically do it. Not because you want to do it or you have the energy or motivation or whatever to do it. Mechanically do it. Like, physically pick up the phone, physically put your finger on the screen of the phone and punch in the numbers and start talking. Physically reach over or physically get up and out of the bed, mechanically overriding your default, and just do it. Okay, so there's that. I hate waking up early, but I get up at 5:30, 5 o'clock most days, 5:30 some days, and there's an infrastructure in place in my life, because guess what? My workout buddies are standing out in front of my house waiting for me at 5:15, 5:20 to run into the workout. It's about a mile away from my house to go do the workout. So there's an infrastructure in place. There's accountability. They're standing outside waiting for me. So you have to welcome that stuff into your life. Get around other people. Okay, so that's the first one. And then the second point I make is this. David Goggins says, I'm a piece of garbage, and has this negative self-talk, and he uses that to motivate himself sometimes and to make himself better. A friend of mine, his name's Dr. Nate Zinzer. Dr. Nate Zinzer was the director of performance at West Point for about 30 years. His fingerprints are all over the manual, the field guide for the Army for war. He's taught at the FBI Academy. He was Eli Manning's mindset coach both times when he was a Super Bowl MVP. On and on, Olympic medalist, you name it. He's coached the elite of the elite. And I had him. He was a speaker at my client retreat about a month ago, and he said, listen, sometimes we can't have a positive thought, or it's hard to have a positive thought, right? Maybe we fail, we struggle, we have a setback. You lose a wrestling match, you lose a business deal, you didn't get the promotion or the job that you wanted, right? It's hard in those moments to have a positive thought, to be a positive thinker. Hey, think positive, like toxic positivity. But you can have a productive thought. Okay, you can say something productive. Positive versus productive. Positive is like, hey, I'll get him next time, no problem. I'm gonna learn from this, and that's great and everything. That's positive. That's hard to do. That's hard to do in a moment of failure. But productive, you can do that. We can all be in a bad mood and feel sour and emotionally beaten up and still have a productive thought. Like, you blow a sales presentation, you're going to go, and you can be, hey, you know what? The productive thought is simply, all right, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to get better from it. I'm going to learn from it. It sucks right now. I'm pissed off. I blew the deal, but I'm going to learn from this. Or, you set a goal to run a marathon and you quit halfway through the training. Okay, well, I learned that I need more infrastructure in my life to run a marathon. Or, I'm gonna find a way to make myself better because of this. Like, that's a productive thought, even if you can't generate a positive thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, my question for you is, coming from Pennsylvania, growing up wrestling, would you have seen yourself at this age saying, I'm going to be a life coach? Because back in the 90s, that is something you didn't really hear of. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, could you imagine your 11th grade self going,
Right.
you know what? I'm going to be a life coach. I'm going to be
Right.
a positive person. Like,
Yeah.
when did you get into this mindset to do it?
I mean, some people in the 90s and 80s grew up with a fact, mother and father just said, listen, take your feelings, take them deep, put them deep inside.
Exactly.
That's your
For real.
motivation, and never, ever, ever let them out. You don't need a life coach. That's what some people are told in the 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't talk to anybody about it. Don't talk to anybody about any of this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Keep it to yourself.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, my dad was a construction worker. Mom was a secretary. I grew up in a
Yeah.
blue collar home. I mean, this was like the furthest thing from our minds.
Yeah.
But so the short answer is no. And the seed was planted first by a business coach I had. And she said to me, I could see you being a motivational speaker. I'm like, what? Motivational speaker? You're crazy. And here, that's part of what I do. It's part of my business. And the way this all came about was I gave a TEDx talk on failure titled "Why I Teach My Children to Fail." And for listeners, you can Google my name and in TED Talk, and you'll find it.
We watched it. Yeah,
yeah, you guys saw it.
We do our research.
Yeah, so it's like it's about my experience as a failure in wrestling, which ultimately led to my success, and that after giving that TED Talk, a lot of organizations started hiring me to speak, and I was speaking, and then I started the podcast called Success Through Failure. And then people started asking me about coaching and can you help me and work with me? And so I started doing that. And then I put together a curriculum that was largely based on the infrastructure that I had and the clarity that I had as a high performing athlete. Like, there's absolute clarity of action in what you're doing. It's not easy, but it's simple, There's a plan. There's very clear goals. That they're the right goals for you. You have these people around you. There's a plan to follow through, even on the days where you don't have the motivation, like we talked about. And so creating this framework, or not even creating, discovering this framework that was in place in my life back when I was performing at my best, that was the impetus to become a coach, right? And I'm somewhere between, it's life coach, it's personal performance coach, it's executive coach. It's like, take all those, put them in a blender, and that's what I do. This framework works for you, whether you want to get your business straight, whether you want to get healthy and fit, whether you want to fix your marriage and relationship. Like, you can apply this framework to all of these areas, and you'll find clarity of action and peace of mind. So yeah, no, I didn't envision myself becoming a coach like this. It's one of those things that it found me more than I found it.
Nice. Well, you just mentioned something too, about the success factor. You mentioned yourself, All-American wrestler, you've had success in wrestling, and you've also mentioned Tom Brady. Now, I would think like the success rate, I guess, depends on where because you're a wrestler, so you're going into that match and it's you against the other wrestler. If you mess up, you lose. If he messes up, you win. If you go, Tom Brady's going to go onto that field. Now, he's got 10 other players on that field. Tom Brady could just do as much as he can. But if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, I mean, he's got 10 other guys that are contributing to the success of that team. So you being on a one-on-one sport and Tom Brady being on a team sport, do you think that there's different motivation to be successful?
Yeah, it's a different. If it's different from the macro level, but here's what here's what here's what parents these days and in society needs to understand. The highest level performers, it's about winning, right? In the end, at the end of the day, we know that, like, that's kind of the default, but like they let go of that and they focus on the process. Like, what can I do right here, right now, in the moment? And listen, Tom Brady can play a great game and lose, or a terrible game and still win. Like, just the same as an individual athlete, an individual performer, like the listener, like whatever team you're on, or sport, in air quotes, sport you play, whatever you're competing at in your life, and in your job, and wherever else you want to be successful. You can have great days and still not have success, right? You can show up and make the best sales presentation of your life, like 10 times better than any other sales presentation you've ever made, and still not win the deal.
Right.
And vice versa, you can show up hungover and give a bad presentation and still win it. But that's
Lawrence Taylor played football, his whole
Yeah.
career in that frame of mind, and he's probably the best football player I've ever seen.
Yeah, right. I mean, and now think how good he'd have been if he was in the right frame of mind.
I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, and so what we're trying to replicate, what we're trying to do with Lawrence Taylor or you or me, is to show up and be the best version of ourselves every day, because that is what gives us the best chance to win. It doesn't guarantee crap. It guarantees you have the best chance to win. And so that's what we want to replicate. It's the performance that matters, not the result, because you can't replicate a result. You can replicate the performance and the ingredients that go into the best performance. Some of my best matches that I ever wrestled in my life, I lost. I lost one year to guy from Illinois. I can't remember, Tony something. Name slipping my mind. He went on to win the national championship that year. But man, I gave him the match of his life. I mean, he was interviewed in an article going into the national championships, and he mentioned me as kind of one of the guys to watch out for. And I lost, but I lost. I lost to the guy, but I wrestled great. And if I can wrestle great every match, that gives myself the best chance to win. So it's not really about winning or losing. It's about focusing on the process. And when you do that, it takes this burden, this fear of failure, this burden that we all carry around with us, and allows you to put it down. And let me, if I can I take you through a quick story here? And this is a really pivotal moment in my life, and I think the listeners, you'll have an epiphany here too that'll change you, and you'll never be able to forget this if you really lock in on this story. So I when I got to college, my goal was to be an All-American, get on the podium at the national championships. And in order to do that, first you have to qualify for the national championships. And I qualified my freshman year in college, got the national championships, but you got to win 4 matches when you get there. And I lost my first 2 matches. I went home. Second year, I failed again. Third year, it was pretty much a repeat of the prior 2 years. I got to the national championships, failed. And so that off season, after ending my season, like in tears in the locker room with my face buried in a towel, wondering what's wrong with me, why can't I do this? I can't possibly run more miles or lift more weights or watch more film. There's not enough hours in the day. I'm thinking to myself, how do I get onto the podium? How do I get to my next level? How do I break through? And I dedicated my off season to figuring out the secret, figuring out what it is that Jim's missing. And I traveled all around. I was a camp counselor at every wrestling camp I could find, just so I could be around these Olympic gold medalists and national championship coaches that they bring in to run these camps in the summer. And I spent my entire off season trying to figure out what the missing secret is for Jim. And the next season rolls around, the summer goes by, next season rolls around, and it's the night before the opening competition. Is the West Virginia Open in November of 1998. And I'm sitting in the hotel room the night before the tournament, and it hits me. I never figured it out. I never figured out the thing that Jim is missing. And in that moment, I let go. I let go of the outcome. I gave up. I gave up on the outcome. And I gave up on the outcome. And I said, listen, all I can do is all I can do. And if I give everything I possibly have to this sport and I get onto the podium, great. If I give everything I possibly have to this sport and I don't, I can't be mad, because you can't do more than you can do. By having that epiphany in that moment, I didn't realize it, but I put this baggage down that I've been carrying, this fear of failure. I took it off of my shoulders and I put it down, and I went out the next day and I competed with absolute freedom. And I had so much fun, and I kicked everyone's ass. I went 5-0 and I won the championship that day. And I realized, like, this is fun. I can compete now without this fear of failure because I'm focused, going back to focusing on the process, not the outcome. Interestingly, it allows you to actually show up at your best and increase your chance of winning when you stop trying to win. When you just wrestle to dominate. You just wrestle to be to score as many points as you can. That might mean winning, that might mean losing, depending on who my opponent is or how the official calls the match that day or whatever it might be. But that's focusing on the process, not the outcome. And I went on to have the best season of my life. Got onto the podium at the national championships and became one of the best wrestlers in the country.
But that story to me makes me think of, you were basing your success of a wrestler if you got on the podium or not.
Yeah.
And not looking at what you did and actually to become the best you. That was, to me, that's a success. But as a wrestler, I know what you're saying. I made it to states, PAAA states, 2 years in a row and went 0-2. And I never wrestled again after that. And I kicked myself in the butt because I allowed that failure to not push me into college,
right,
and continue to wrestle.
Yeah.
And that's so. And the funny thing is how you saying it was fun because you left that baggage. If you watch any of the Penn State wrestlers now, when they talk, every time they get off the mat, they say, we're just having fun. We're just having fun. But you can have fun when you're winning like they're winning.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you hear, the book, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about that. One of the 7 habits is start with the end in mind. Okay, so we start with the end in mind. We go, okay, I want to get onto the podium. I want to win the national championship. I want to get the promotion, start the business, heal my marriage, run the marathon, whatever it might be. Okay, that's the end. We start with the end in mind. We reverse engineer the process. What do I have to do to get there? Then I focus on that process. And if I focus on that process and give everything I can to that process, and that means bringing coaches into my world, evaluating the process, reconstructing it, deconstructing it, looking at what's working, what's not working along the way. If I give everything to that process and I get to the end and I succeed or fail, that's almost irrelevant, because you can't control the winning. Right? I define success by getting onto the podium. But once I let go and gave up and stopped defining success as getting on the podium and let go of getting on the podium, that's when getting on the podium actually, interestingly, ironically, became more possible.
It's funny.
It's a mind trick you have to play on yourself.
Like you said something before about the performance level, like when it comes to like what your mindset is. I actually had a dad moment last week that was kind of like me and Josh. We coached our children in baseball their whole lives. We coached travel baseball teams, all-star teams, little league teams. We were always their coaches, and that literally. And we were talking about this last night. Some of the greatest and most funnest times I've ever had in my life. Now, last week, my son is 18, about to be 19 now, and he's not playing baseball in college, but we were out the field hitting the other day, and I was pitching to him, and he was missing, and he was hitting the ball foul, and he was getting really, really frustrated. And I just said, listen, stop. I said, breathe. There's no tournament tomorrow. There's no game tomorrow. This is dad and son. We're just hanging out hitting baseballs. He smiled, told me he loved me, and he smashed the ball after that. So for the rest of our lives, it's going to be a fun thing and a fun memory for me and my son to have. And with all that pressure of no tournament tomorrow, he was smashing the ball again.
Yeah, there you go. That's a case in point. It's gaining that perspective and keeping that perspective. Like sports psychology, performance psychology 101 is this: everything's important, nothing is special. Everything is important. Nothing is special. It's the moments when we place added pressure, when we try to do more than we're capable, try to do more than we did the other times. That's when we tense up, tighten up, swing too early, swing too late. That's when we're not at our best. And you talk to Olympians, Kendall Cross, Olympic gold medalist wrestler. He talks about the day of his Olympic gold medal match. He had to. I mean, you could think like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest day of my life. Like, I have to like be really prepared. Maybe I start stretching out earlier. Maybe I warm up a little bit better. Maybe I really focus on this or that. And like, no BS. Like, wake up. He's like, I woke up, had a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, had breakfast. Just like a regular day.
Yeah.
You have to treat it like a regular day so that you can show up and just do the same thing that got you there. Otherwise, if you try to do too much, that's when it doesn't work.
Now, you were talking earlier about how before your senior year, you were going to all these camps and trying to get with the best wrestlers. And we have the saying, iron sharpens iron. So, like nowadays, they have these wrestling clubs where these kids get a lot more experience with the better wrestlers. With what you do now, is that kind of the same mantra that you kind of think of, that iron sharpens iron? If you're not surrounding yourself with the best, and as you're telling the people, do you want them to surround themselves with people of the same mindset in order for them to see, look, all right, I got to do this also?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta, like I said, this is something that is inherent and natural and just by default there in sport, but it is not in the real world. And so, I have mastermind groups. I have groups of men mostly who are in these groups. These are high performing men, and they don't want to be around just around the average person in their neighborhood or community. They want to get around other high performing men who are striving to be their best in every area of their life. Because guess what? Rising tide lifts all ships. It sets a new standard,
Yeah.
and yeah, so you have to be around that level. And these clubs you're talking about, these kids get to be around the best of the best, and that's in every sport nowadays. Is like these clubs are just proliferating everywhere, whether it's volleyball or wrestling or you name it. And the best kids get to be around the best kids, so the best are getting even better, and it's accelerating the development of young athletes. And that's the same model. It's simple. If people were just willing to go, okay, listen, where do I want to up level in my life? Do I want to get better at sales or business or leadership or communication or running, push ups, whatever? Go be around people that are doing that.
Right.
Just go be around them. And by default, if you do nothing else, you will get better.
Exactly. And I mean, you mentioned that your dad was a construction worker. I'm a construction worker as well here in New York. I'm a union iron worker in New York
Yeah, my
City.
dad was a union sheet metal worker.
Ah, that's fantastic. In New York
Yeah.
City,
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Oh, Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
right? Okay, yeah. I'm still I'm still working. I got 23 years in the union, and we're really fighting like kind of a battle like in New York City right now with non-union construction and union construction.
Sure.
So I guess in the years, a lot of people look at the union construction workers like these guys can kind of skate by. They don't do much or whatever. That mantra is completely out the window because I have had bosses in the past or people say to me like, yeah, I'm a great boss, but they're really not. The one guy that said to me, he's the one best guy I ever worked for, said to me, Rich, I'm really only as good as the guy that I'm around and the guys that I hire.
Yeah.
And that was such a smart thing to say because what you just said is if you want to be successful, you can be successful, but you also have to surround yourselves that want to be successful too. Like I go to work every day and my motivation and my motive for success is I have two beautiful sons and a beautiful wife and I have a nice life and I want to protect that. So that's my motivation every day. So I can't get caught slipping. So if I see somebody else doing that, we kind of have to police ourselves, I think, this day and age as men, and we got to hold ourselves as men to a different standard.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of a lot of below average and people who are skating by, right? And I I know my dad didn't skate by. He was in a union, man. He busted his hump. Thankfully for the union, he got a decent wage and had safety protocols in place that wouldn't have been in place otherwise. I mean, he was breathing asbestos back in the
Yeah.
early parts. I mean, big clumps of asbestos, and if it weren't for the union, he'd breathe that his whole career,
Yeah.
but the unions, make sure that these guys aren't breathing in cancerous materials.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's it, man. You got to be You gotta surround yourself with the right people. And there's the famous quote, you are the average of the 5 people you must spend the most time with. And that there's a lot of truth to that. It's not totally true in the sense that I mean, shoot, I've 2 daughters and 2 sons, and then my wife, right? So there's 3 women in my house and 2 men. So the average of the 5 people I'd spend the most time with would be like a teenage girl, So you gotta bring other people into your life too, right?
Of course you do.
It might be through reading books, it might be through listening to podcasts. Like if you can't surround yourself with the people you want to be surrounded with, find other ways to bring them and their messages into your life through podcasts, through reading, and other ways.
It's funny you say that. At least you have those people. My kids are in college, and it was my wife and I was home for 2 years injured. I had 2 dogs. So now what's my average?
Yeah, right. Part dog.
Now, but a question for you. And again, if we ask anything that you're not comfortable answering, just say so. Because
Okay.
you're a business person, and I understand. But we keep talking about surround yourself with better people and trying to make yourself better and push yourself. But what are your thoughts on the participation trophies? Because I know growing up, you didn't get them. And to me, that's almost saying to those kids that didn't try hard, here's a trophy. You did no. And it kills me. Like James Harrison, I remember got into some stuff a couple years back because he threw away his child's participation trophy.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it's almost like encouraging kids. You don't have to do much. Just you're still gonna.
You could just do enough.
So I'm going to give you guys probably the opposite answer you would expect to come from me in some ways. And as a matter of fact, if you Google my name, and this is for the listeners, if you Google my name and participation trophy, you'll probably find an article and a podcast episode I gave on this. So there was an interview. It was the head women's basketball coach for University of Louisville. Okay. And he's sitting there behind the podium at a press conference for a game that he just lost. He just lost, right, to another team. And he starts blaming participation trophies for his girls' lack of effort and motivation, whatever. But here's the deal. The same girls that he recruited, like, they're in the same generation as the girls who just beat him.
Yeah.
So here's a coach blaming participation trophies, blaming somebody else for his own lack of, instead of saying, you know what, it's on me. I got to step my game up. I got to find a way to either recruit the better girls or motivate my girls or get them to execute the fundamentals. He's blaming, and people are using this so often to blame. And here's my perspective. And listen, there's a lot of nuances to this. So I agree with you guys. And a lot of the other people saying participation trophies are bad. Here's what I see. As a blue collar kid growing up in a blue collar home in Western Pennsylvania, the hotbed of wrestling in America, I got participation trophies all the way through. Like every season we got like a medal or a trophy or a plaque. You got like a reward for competing, but I didn't get the championship trophy. No one's getting a championship trophy if they don't win. If you don't win the championship, you're not getting the championship trophy, right? Like, my dad, he was on the rifle team in Millvale High School. He got a participation trophy. It wasn't a trophy. It was called a Letterman jacket. Like, we give out letters. Like, that's the same thing as a participation trophy.
Wow.
I never thought of it like that, Jim. Yeah,
I ran a Spartan race. I ran Spartan races the last 4 or 5 years. Every time I do a Spartan race, they hand me a medal for participating. This is Spartan, Joe DeSena, and I love Joe. Joe's a friend of mine. I text with Joe all the time. We're getting participation trophies. And you might say, yeah, but you're doing something hard. But yeah, guess what? Playing soccer for a 6-year-old, that's hard. We're not giving them the championship trophy unless they win the championship, but we might give him a ribbon for competing and he puts it up on his wall. You know what I'm saying? So what it comes down to is these have always been around in some way, shape, or form. Yes, they can be abused, but we're focusing on the wrong thing. Kids aren't doing a sport for the trophy. This is a parent thing. Parents like to get out the trophy and it's great. Like, none of my kids go compete for the trophy, or I'm sorry, for the participation award. They want to
Right.
win the championship. And my kids aren't even particularly competitive.
Right.
But they love to go compete. And that's really what we have to focus on. And what is happening in our society is going back to focus on the process, not the outcome. Parents are now focused on the outcome and not the
Yeah.
process. The parents are the problem. And
Mm.
the parents are pushing these kids to be 8-year-old national champions. It's like, no, it's about the process of going out and competing and getting bloody and getting hurt and trying something and failing and succeeding and building friendships, building
Yep.
relationships, being around mentors and coaches who are good people who are teaching good lessons to your kids. Like, that's what this is really about. People are focused on participation trophies and going back to the Louisville coach, like blaming other people, blaming the participation trophy for their lack of parenting or their lack of effort or input into their own kids' lives. So that's my that's my soapbox on the.
I do have to say, you changed my mindset on it, and I actually realized as you're talking, you kind of just repeated what I said about when you, instead of focusing on getting on the podium, you just focused on you stop thinking of that. So that's kind of like the
Yeah.
same thing as participation trophies. Why is everyone so mad at this when it's really the championship that there is a trophy? But it doesn't matter about the participation trophy. They did go out there, they did play, they did try. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point before about the parents. I just 30-second story. A long time ago, I'm coaching. I think the kids were like 7 or 8 at the time, and there was a championship game that day, and our team won the championship. It was my son and 3 or 4 other kids. They had medals around their neck because they won the championship.
Yeah.
So a bunch of our friends came. The mom wanted to take pictures with all the boys, and like 6 or 7 of the boys didn't have medals on. So the mother kindly came over and asked me, "Say, do you mind having your son and his friends take their medals off while I take the picture?" And I wasn't okay with that, but I wasn't rude.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah, no,
you
I get
also
it.
have to acknowledge that the kids did get you can't have
absolutely.
everybody the same, but you also have to
Absolutely.
acknowledge that they did win.
100%. I totally agree with you. That's ridiculous. That shoot house.
I couldn't believe she said it. I really couldn't.
No, come on. I mean, someone actually did win the championship, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It happened to be my third Little League series
Here
championship.
we go.
So
Talk
I got
about-
5 of them
Okay,
on my record.
three-timer. I get it.
I'm that Little League coach guy that's got the 5 championships that's still going to take it to my grave.
That's
He's
right.
the Al Bundy of Fishkill.
I have a question for you now. We talk about kids a little bit. Crying with kids and like sports, like baseball. Being that I coached baseball for a long time, I've at a young level. When it comes to failure, I've seen a lot of kids, like when they strike out, they'll fail and they cry, or and they run off, and they're just mad. Now, do you think at some point, if like a 7-year-old is crying, because he doesn't understand yet, but I've actually literally seen like 13, 14, 15-year-old kids strike out with tears. Now, is that just a kid you think that doesn't understand failure yet? Or do you think it's a kid that's just, I don't know, where do you think that mindset comes when a kid at 13 or 14 is still crying?
Great question. So you guys ask good questions, man.
Thank you.
So I was a crier. When I was young, I was a crier. And I was, lose a wrestling match, strike out. I was a crier, when I was like elementary school.
Yeah.
And I have a client right now that I'm working with. His son is a crier, but this kid is so competitive. I mean, this kid is a freaking warrior on the wrestling mat, lacrosse field, football field, flag football. I mean, he's a crier, but man, he's intense. And so every kid is different. This kid, listen, every kid is different. Some kids cry because they don't understand that failure is part of it. Some kids cry because they're so competitive and they want to win so bad. And that's also an understanding that failure, or a lack of understanding that failure is part of it. Some of it is also just some kids aren't mature enough to emotionally regulate and handle it. Some kids have a lot of this pressure put onto them by their parents, right? So they feel like they're letting mom and dad down, especially if mom and dad are berating them after they lose. I hate when I see coaches do that.
Oh, that's the worst.
Parents,
Terrible.
Like the best coaching advice I ever got. Best parenting advice I ever got was, and this was from a survey of athletes and coaches and parents, but the parents, the athletes, young athletes, Best thing that mom and dad can say to them after a competition, win or lose, is, I love to watch you compete. I
Yes.
love to watch you compete. Win or lose, same message. I love you. I love to watch you step out there and go to battle on the soccer field, on the wrestling mat, on the chessboard, on the band, whatever. It's like, that's how we got to support our kids. So,
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, some of those kids are going to cry. Some are just going to be emotionally less mature or more mature. Some are going to care more. Some are going to care less. Some are going to internalize. Maybe they're not crying outwardly, but inside they're like telling themselves how they're garbage. Going back to David Goggins. Some of those kids are going to be, maybe there's no tears physically, but on the inside they're saying the wrong things to themselves.
Also, I just have one more thing, like one more thing about the kids. Like when you kind of separating the types of criers that they have, because you come through the past where you have the kids that are really criers and this, that, and the other thing. But I've always taught my two boys to compete every day, and they do. They played baseball, football, basketball. Yeah, like I said, I'm not a high, but on a level, they were both pretty good. Now, I always taught them, don't be a crier. You can cry, but there's a time and a place for it. Now, I meant there's two times in my life where I watched my son Aiden cry and I watched my son Jack cry. Now, the both times that they cried on a baseball field like that, they almost kind of walked away and they were in the side and they didn't want to at first, but then I walked over to him and I said, Aiden, buddy, it's okay. Because I knew why he was upset, because I watched him put his whole, and he's never, ever, neither of my kids are ever the kid's going to say, well, you let me down because you didn't do that. Or he
Right.
felt that he made an error at the end of the game that did blow the game. And he was very upset. But I walked up to him, I hugged him, I told him it's okay to cry. You never do. And it's a learning experience. It's like you say, it's a
Yeah,
failure that you're
that's
going to
great.
learn from.
Yeah, that's great, man. What a moment.
Yeah.
Man, what a tough moment for a kid, and what a just a smart thing to do as a dad, and hug him and say it's okay to cry, and this is
Yeah.
tough. I'm with you, buddy. I love you, and we're gonna get through this. And you're gonna get better. You're gonna be better for it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
truly believe that.
And what he
Yep.
just said about like failure that you're going to learn from, I always told when I coached wrestling, I told my wrestlers, the high school kids, I said, you don't lose a match unless you don't learn from not winning.
Yeah, that's right.
Meaning, if you learned something while not winning that match, then you didn't lose it. But if you walk off that mat and was just like, I have no idea why I lost, well, then you lost the match.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in talking about the crying, with you being the motivational speaker and a life coach, what is your outlet? Because you come on here with all this energy, and Rich said that on the way home from the camper. He was like, what is, like, when you see motivational speakers, they're always rah, 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 energy, energy. What is your release? Because you have to have moments of self-doubt. You have to have bad moments. Is it the running? Is it, like I said, I did one the other day where I just screamed into a pillow because it seemed like
Yeah.
everything was just dominoing down and I just had to let it out.
Yeah.
What is your release?
Yeah, man. The failure, the doubt, it's always, it's just always there. This infrastructure that I have talked about, and this sort of framework that we've had in our lives as athletes that we need to rebuild into our lives in the real world, um, brings me energy. There are routines that I have to do that I know that if I do them, I will be the best or a better version of myself than if I didn't do them. That includes working out. That includes um, doing nice things for my wife. It includes writing down my goals and having what I call micro goals in front of me. It brings me confidence and clarity. I might have to meditate or do some deep breathing. So all of that, right? There's all of those things that I have to do, just like a performance for a wrestling match or a practice when I was, in that game. There were things that I had to do to get myself ready and prepared, and so I could show up with energy. And that's those are the things that I do. And listen, I fail. I sometimes sleep in, or I put the wrong food, bad foods in my mouth. I waste time. I have low energy. Like this week, coming off of a long weekend with my family, I did 4-day weekend up in Pittsburgh with my family, and had too many beers over the weekend, and didn't sleep well, and like Monday was off, so Tuesday was my first day of work this week, and I wasn't all there, man. I wasn't all there, so I
Yeah.
had to like I made sure I got to bed earlier that night. I did get up and I went for a 6 mile run, and that felt good. I knew I had that under my belt. That brought me like some confidence. I hydrated. Man, drink a lot of water today because you're not feeling great. Drink a lot of water. I wasn't drunk or hungover. I just just was off my game. Wasn't eating the same
Yeah.
foods and sleeping, going to bed later and stuff. You just got to have those routines to get you back on the path. And I know exactly what those routines are for me. Now, showing up for this podcast, uh, whenever I step onto a wrestling mat as a wrestling coach or a clinician or teacher, I I almost take on or embody like a new level of myself. It's a higher energy level. It is it's almost like an alter ego that shows up. I remember there's a guy in the wrestling world named Mike Krause, and he's this like youth coach, and he's a madman on the wrestling mat, man. And he talked about it once about when he puts his wrestling shoes on, he is like a new, different human being. And I feel that way when I put my wrestling shoes on, and I feel that way when I hit record or jump on a show with you guys. Like, when I go in and sit down and talk to my kids after this, like, I'm not gonna be all like hyped up crazy guy and talking to my wife, fired up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, hey hon, how was your day? What are we doing for dinner tonight? It's
Yeah.
like it's
Right.
it's just that, and we all have that. And actually it's part of the I do leadership development coaching for corporate environments and CEOs and executives. And this assessment that we do, this business partner who I mentioned earlier, this he works with a lot of elite coaches and athletes as well as business leaders. We do an assessment, and this assessment actually shows you two different things. It shows you how you are, like who you are and how you are in your natural environment. And then when you turn on for game day, which is when you walk through the door at work, who are you there? Right. And those are two different people for most of us, right? Sometimes there's a lot of similarities. Or I should say usually there's a lot of obviously similarities, but there are differences there. And for
Yeah.
me, there's a difference when I turn on in game day and I'm around other people and I hit record or I step onto the wrestling mat, I step on stage in front of an audience. There's a different Jim that shows up. Just like for you guys, like if we were to do this assessment on you guys and for you, the listeners listening as well at home, like if you were to do this assessment, there would be a natural version of you at home with your family, with your kids or whatever, with your friends, and then a different version of you. One may be more or less assertive. One may be more or less sociable. One may be more or less sort of collaborative or big picture versus sort of getting into the minutia. Like those are all going to be different. And that's the case with all of us. And it's important to understand those things about ourselves because when we do, we can hedge against our blind spots and then really leverage our strengths.
It's funny you say that because all my friends know me. Like I'm a high energy guy, like 20, like literally, like I could show up to like the library and I'm high energy.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm always
Yeah.
high, I high up, like let it go, go, go. So it's almost to a fault because the fact of the matter is like, I'm always that high energy guy that's always go, go, go. When I don't feel it that day, I'm literally like an open book. It's like there's a big X on my forehead saying, look, I got something going on. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I am that guy who's go, 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 high energy all the time. And it's kind of like, kind of curse a little bit because when I do have a lot going on, it's like it's written all over my face, So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, give and tuck. But I do like being the high energy guy all the time. I enjoy the fact I'm the guy that was always, getting the kids going and running around like a lunatic. And I'm
Yeah.
51 years old and I'm still a kid at heart,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Now I have a questions about, your, like motivation and the failure and everything like that. Like my wife is into something called The Secret. Do you know what The Secret is?
Sure. Yeah.
Now she's turned me on to that recently, and I think it kind of like goes in hand or kind of parallels kind of like what you do. It's kind of like you're putting good energy out into the
Yep.
universe, and that's what you're doing. Like we do our research on the people we interview, and you have this high energy, and your interviews and when you talk, it's like you have this, you put it out there for people. It's like you can do this, you can attain this. This is all stuff that's being put out there. Do you believe in that kind of mindset, like The
Yeah.
Secret, where it's like if you do put it out there, if you say this is what I need in the universe, it's going to come to you?
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. And the same type of work that my business partner, Dr. Tom Perrin, does, or my friend, Dr. Nate Zinzer, the director of performance at West Point, who I talked about, like these guys all talk about confidence, and the way that you think, especially Dr. Zinzer, really, he wrote a great book called The Confident Mind. All of this stuff that he talks about, it's visualization, it's mantras, it's using the right words and talking to ourselves with the right language, creating a feeling inside of ourselves of success even before it happens. That's the less I don't know, woo woo, whatever you want to call it. That's the less, lesser version of it. Whereas the secret is kind of like, I'm gonna go extreme here just to paint a picture. It's like, close your eyes, click your heels 3 times, and say,
Right.
a check is going to show up in the mailbox today 3 times, and
Gotta be
a
realistic.
check, and a check, you think a check's going to show up in the mail.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't believe it in that sense. I do believe there's maybe a connection to God in there, around our beliefs and our faith, that does move the universe and things in our favor. Um, and I also think there's just part of it is belief and mindset. And so think of it this way: if you were walking down a trail and you believed in with every bit of your heart that there was only one path down this trail, and there was no other path, no other forks in the road, no other alternative routes, you're not going to see any other alternative routes. However, if you believe in the secret, or you start using these positive mantras and affirmations and visualizing other alternative paths coming off of this path that you're on, this hypothetical path that you're going through life, and if you believe there are other opportunities and other paths, then you're going to be looking for them, and they're going to show up, and you're going to see other opportunities and other directions to go. You're going to see forks in the paths and different things along the way that you would not see if you believed that they were not there. And that's really what this comes down to. And when you have a mindset and a belief, and you use the idea of the secret, which is really, creating and feeling success even before it happens, then you're going to operate like that successful person. Just like an Olympic gold medalist never stepped into the arena of competition without having visualized or believed in themselves before they ever won that they could possibly win. Like, it's an absurd thought to think I can win an Olympic gold medal. But if you think that, your chances of actually achieving it go up exponentially. Like, that just because of the fact that you believe it. Now you see opportunities. Oh, there's this coach. I didn't even realize. I would have had my head down looking at the path, but instead I had my head up because I believed. And now I see this opportunity, this fork in the road that can take me down that direction towards success, and whatever that success looks like for you.
Well, Jim, I've read and watched videos of where like people have said that the human brain is hardwired through evolution to think of the negative,
Sure.
and that it. And I think the secret's kind of the thing where your mind always thinks of the negative. And I've watched videos of professors and people talk about every day try to think of at least one positive thought. And they said that will start to change that hardwiring of thinking of the negative and then you think of more positive thoughts, because it is human nature to be like, oh, I can't do that. Very few people are like, oh yeah, I can do that right away. The first thought is, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, that risk is hardwired into us because it kept us alive. If our ancestors were walking past a bush, and they heard like a rattling in the bush, and if they had a negativity bias, they would say, "Oh, there might be a saber-toothed tiger in there. I need to run." Well, guess what? You're going to live, even if that noise is a rabbit.
Right.
You're going to tend to survive more often than the person who says, that's just a rabbit, don't worry about it. They're going to get killed,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so yes, it's hardwired into us, and we have to be aware of that. And it helped us then. It helps us less so now. Um, but being aware of that will help us say, oh, I'm having that negativity bias again, right? I
Right.
tried to give a public speech. I tried to run a marathon. I tried to heal my relationship, and I failed. I tried to get that promotion or start that business, and I failed. That's the saber-toothed tiger in the bush. I'm not going to do it again, because that was
Yeah.
dangerous, scary, embarrassing. made me feel like I was going to be cast out of the tribe, and I don't want to be cast out of the tribe. And so I'm not going to take a risk anymore. If we become aware of this by, say, working with a coach or journaling or meditation, things like this, if you become present and aware, then you can say, wait a second, that thing's happening again. Let me override that with some different language and say, oh, I am going to try that thing because I failed last time. And that actually makes me more qualified to succeed this time, not less.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And we just talking about The Secret there for a second. I kind of like compared to like when I was talking to my wife about to kind of like Aladdin's lamp. They're kind of like wishes, but you have to be realistic about them. If you want to wish for $1 million, you want to put it out there, you want $1 million. How about you wish that you get that high paying job that you want, or maybe
Yeah.
that be realistic about your thoughts. Like the Aladdin's lamp thing where you get the 3 wishes. Well, how about you lower it down a little bit and you make it attainable? Like, how about I wish that I could be a great dad, or I wish that I could have that good job. And let's say, lower your expectations about your wishes a little bit and putting it out there.
Yeah, well, so that's debatable, and I agree with you. Like, I a lot of times go along that line of thinking too, and then I think to myself, and I'm going to use an extreme example. What is maybe, and he's a little bit controversial these days, but what if Elon Musk was realistic? you know,
Yeah.
what if he was realistic and said, I can't really build a new rocket and a rocket company where we build our own
Yeah.
parts and don't really outsource. And let's be realistic here, right? If he was realistic, he would never have built the company that he has in SpaceX. If he was realistic about Tesla, that thing would have shut down. They would have failed and closed their doors many, many years ago. I mean, and who knows? Are we going to go to Mars? I mean, he certainly thinks so, but that's
That's a
certainly
great
an
point.
unrealistic, silly belief. But I thought that 5 years ago too, and now it's kind of like, well, crap. It actually kind of looks like it might happen here.
Yeah, there's a chance.
Like that unrealistic thinking is, um, and he's so hardwired not to internalize failure. And there's just listen, everybody's different.
Yeah.
But when I had an unrealistic thought, to be honest. It's something, listen, not an Elon Musk kind of unrealistic thought, but I had an unrealistic thought of like, I want to be a national champion. I never even got onto the podium at the Pennsylvania State Championships. I'm a recruited walk-on, non-scholarship wrestler. I want to be a national champion. Silly, stupid thought, but I ended up on the podium. You
Yeah.
shoot for the moon. If
Yeah.
you miss, you're among the stars, and that's what happened to
Right.
me. Um, so yeah, there's that is so debatable, and it's just, I don't think there's a
Good
right or
point.
wrong answer. It's just, what is realistic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
So, Jim, I know you have to go because 5 o'clock's your busy time, you said.
Yeah,
But
it's
for the
crazy.
people listening, what do you have going on? How can they reach you? How can they find you if they want to talk to you or whatever?
Yeah, if you Google my name, Jim Harshaw, Harshaw, you'll find me on my website. You'll find me on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. You'll find me. Just Google my name. You'll find my TEDx talk. If you want to talk, go to my website. Go to jimharshawjr.com/apply. So jimharshawjr.com/apply, and you can apply for a free one-time coaching call with me, and we can walk through what your challenges are, what you're trying to achieve, and I can really point you in the right direction, and give you some clarity in that call. And if it works, that there may be more work that we can do together, great. If not, I'll point you in the right direction. You can kind of go on your own, and work on those things by yourself.
All right.
Now,
That's
what's your podcast and where can they find that?
Success Through Failure is the podcast. You can find it on any podcast platform. Success Through Failure. And 400 plus episodes and rolling. Tim Ferriss, Jack Canfield, Olympic gold medalist, Navy SEALs, you name it. We've had some of the world class, just a lot of world class people on there, and it's been a really fun journey. A lot of learning to do there. And if you want to get just the cliff notes from each of those episodes, you can go to jimharshawjr.com/action and you can get all the action plans from those episodes for free.
nice. I mean, I don't know if I have an unrealistic goal or not, but I plan the next time we talk to you guys that me and Josh might be almost as big as Joe Rogan. Maybe. I mean, is that unrealistic for me to say?
Why would it be?
Yeah.
If he
I
can do it,
know.
why not
I hear
you?
you, man. I
you
hear
know
you. You know what I say to myself all the time? I really do.
Yep, you can.
All right. Well, Jim, I appreciate it. Great conversation. You've changed my mind on a
Yes,
couple
you have.
kind of how I was thinking on certain things. So I appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I wish you the best of luck in everything you do and your family. So
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, Jim. Like, me too. You definitely changed my mindset a couple of things as well. And listen, from me to you, the world definitely needs people like you to tell them that they can do it and get up and just do it. So the world needs people like you, and I really, really appreciate what you do, sir. And I appreciate you coming on and giving us your time today.
Likewise, guys, I appreciate what you guys are doing. The world needs more people like you guys putting these kind of messages out into the world. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Jim. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay, bye, guys.
all right, bye.